Barb. I almost put that one in there, David Barb, of you. Almost. Yeah, that one. But I just couldn't do it. The song didn't fit, so. I'd like you to take your Bible and turn to Proverbs 31. We'll be out of the book of John today as we talk about the ABCs of womanhood. You know, Proverbs 31 is a very intimidating chapter. Over the years, women have said, I just can't measure up. But I really think that Proverbs 31 is a chapter or a section of a chapter particularly for today, for our Christian women. And why do I say that? Because for so long, Christians have been picked on, unjustly so, maybe justly so, I don't know, because we keep our women down and we don't empower them, and we just, whatever you might say, we're just wrong the way we treat our women. And when I read my Bible, I just get confused. I say, where are they coming from? Where are they getting their ideas? And in this day, when we need a strong woman, Proverbs 31 isn't necessarily an intimidating passage. It's the passage of a strong woman. Now, you won't necessarily find in this passage that you can do everything that the Proverbs 31 woman can. And that's not really the point of this passage. To some degree, it's sort of like a cafeteria, because some things won't apply to you, and some things will apply to you. And I'd say excel in those areas that do apply to you. And then if there are areas that need to be worked on, work on those. And if there's areas that don't apply, don't worry about it. Because today we're celebrating not just motherhood, we're celebrating womanhood. And so we celebrate all of our godly women. So here we go, Proverbs 31, verse 10. Who can find a virtuous wife? Sounds a little skeptical, doesn't it? I don't think that's the point at all, but certainly when you look around the world, I look around and say, what a lucky guy I am. And some of you are saying hopefully all of you are saying the exact same thing. What a lucky guy I am. Because I found a virtuous wife, for her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband safely trusts in her, so he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. She's like the merchant ship. She brings her food from afar. She also rises while it is yet night, provides food for her household and a portion for her maidservants. This particular lady has to have maidservants to get everything done that's in this chapter. Verse 16, she considers a field and buys it. From her profit she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms. She perceives that her merchandise is good, and her lamp does not go out by night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hand holds the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. She's not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with fine clothes. She makes tapestry for herself. I love that. How many of you women make tapestry for yourself? You take blinds down or curtains down, and is that what you do? I've seen my wife do that before, and they did that in The Sound of Music, didn't they? Yeah, that's exactly what they did. She makes tapestry for herself. Okay, I think that just means she makes fine clothes for herself. Her clothing is fine, linen, and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, supplies sashes for the merchants. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. She watches over the ways of her household, does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. Let's bow in prayer. Lord, we ask for this little sermon on womanhood and motherhood, that you will give us a heart of understanding and make the ladies strong women for the times in which we live. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, the story is told of a little boy who forgot his lines in a Sunday school presentation. His mother was in the front row, as all good mothers are, to prompt him just in case she forgot. She gestured and forms the word silently with his lips, but it didn't help. He couldn't read her lips. Her son's memory was blank. Finally, she leaned forward and whispered a cue. I am the light of the world. The child beamed and with great feeling in a loud, clear voice said, my mother is the light of the world. The boy was not too far off. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. And we hope that you are the light of your world. And for those of you who are not mothers, we hope that you are also the light of your world. Today we consider the ABCs of a godly woman. And the reason why I say the ABCs of a godly woman, because if you're reading this passage in the English, which we all did, you probably didn't notice that it was a poem. It was a Hebrew poem. It was an acrostic Hebrew poem. Every single verse in the Hebrew starts with a different letter of the alphabet. So we would say in English A, B, C, D, E, F, and so the first letter would start with and, or boy, or come. Well, in the Hebrew, it's Aleph, and so on. Beth, Gimel, and so on. But I get confused sometimes with Greek. So I want to say the Greek word. Anyway, I know Greek a lot better than I know Hebrew. But so what we're going to do today is we're going to take this Hebrew poem of 22 letters, and I'm going to give you a 22-point sermon. Whoo! What was it, last week? I gave you a 2-point sermon. This one, some of you in the front didn't come to church today because you knew it was going to be a long one. 22 points. Amazing. But, so, I guess let's just make an application right now. And one of the great poems of the Bible is about women, and I suppose that can mean that women are poetry in motion, huh? Sometimes your life is so amazing that us guys stand back and say, how in the world do you do it? Thank you for all that you do. A study was done way back in 1981 by an attorney on the monetary value of a wife's services in the home. How much do you think a wife was worth in 1981? Well, he listed the functions that she performs: a chauffeur, gardener, family counselor, maintenance worker, cleaning woman, housekeeper, cook, errand runner, bookkeeper, budget manager, interior decorator, caterer, dietitian, secretary, public relations person, hostess, and of course then the man, what did he get? Drinks beer, right? That's his one. No, that's probably not. But anyway, he figured that using the amount of times that she spent doing these things and what she should get paid for them back in 1981, that came to $40,823 a year. What do you think that's worth today, 40 years later? Wow. A lot more. Women are valuable. Incredible. 22-point sermon. We're going to talk about the value of a woman. Now, again, don't be too intimidated by this woman, but recognize that Christian women are not only godly women, they're strong women. And we encourage our women to be women of value and strength. So when you see something that you excel in it more. It's like the duck. If you're a duck, swim. Don't climb trees, swim. That kind of thing. So let's look at Hebrew poetry for a second here. Here's the Hebrew alphabet. And you got to start from the right to the left. And something interesting happened to me this week when I was copying some of the Hebrew poetry, the Hebrew words from my Bible program into my word processor. In my Bible, they were right to left. The words were written right to left. But when I copied them into my word processor, guess what happened? They flipped from left to right. And I was, what just happened? It took me a while to figure out what was going on. But, so the Hebrew alphabet starts on the upper right, and you see there Aleph, Beth, Gimel, Daleth, and so on. We're going to go through every single one of those 22. And by the way, it's a little confusing when you start to look at Hebrew alphabet there online, because there are 5 letters that have variations. And so they're kind of like depending on an ending of a word, apparently, or something like that. So there are, a lot of places list 29 letters of the alphabet, and you say, how does that happen? It's because there are 5 letters that have variations. So yeah, that's what that's about. Well, let's start with Aleph. Aleph. Verse 10. So, a woman of virtue. Who can find a woman of virtue? And Aleph, a woman, starts with Aleph. Now, the A or Aleph is silent, so you don't hear it. It's Isha is the word. Who can find an Isha of virtue? For her worth is far above rubies. Years ago, back when things seemed almost normal, the New York Times decided to ask who were the 12 greatest women in the United States at the time. After due consideration, they decided that the 12 greatest women in the United States were women who had never been heard of outside the home. They were mothers, moms. The Hebrew word virtuous means a woman with strength of character. She's a courageous woman. And today's society requires courage. It's going to take courage for you to stand with your convictions. There's a woman, she appears to be Christian, running for school board up in Beaverton, and she's running against all this craziness that's going on in the world today. She's against the, what do they call that? The Voice magazine. You ought to pick that up. It's not identity politics. It's the whole racial thing anyway. What's the word? Okay, you don't know what it is. What's that? Social justice. That's another word for it. But they're teaching kids in the school about racism and how. Critical race theory, there it is. So pick up that Voice magazine. It talks about critical race theory and why it's bad. She's running against all that stuff, and it takes courage, because you know what the first thing that happens is? They take away your Twitter account. They attack you in the press. Today you're just plain strange if you stand for Christianity. And so it's going to take a virtuous woman to stand. A woman of strength of character. That's who you need to become. Her worth is far above anything else. Incredible, isn't that right? You can have all the money in the world and be miserable. Or you can have a woman of virtue. Beth is the second one, Beth. And the word here is trust. Trustworthy. The heart of her husband safely trusts in her, so he will have no lack of gain. I don't know if you know this, but every single relationship, husband and wife relationship, is based upon trust. It's a critical key component in a relationship. When trust goes, guess what happens to the marriage? The marriage goes. If you can't trust him, if you can't trust her, it's an incredible problem. So this man in Proverbs 31 is so confident of trusting his wife that he entrusts himself, his whole entire estate to her. And in many estates today, the wife does take care of the finances. That wasn't always true with ours, but for the last, I don't know, umpteen years, my wife has been handling it. And, I fully don't expect my money, my vast sum of money in my account, to disappear overnight and have my wife abscond with it or spend it all on Amazon, although there are some questions about that. Because why? Because I can trust her. And that's an incredible thing of value. And at the same time, she doesn't expect that I'm going to take the money and run either, no matter how much or how little is there. Make it your goal to be trustworthy. That's a strong woman. Be faithful in everything you do. Gimel, number 3. Gimel. And it's the word does. In the Hebrew, does starts with G, Gimel. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She's committed to love for a lifetime. We just had our anniversary. Love for a lifetime. We're hoping to make it there to the very end together. And she's really changing. And so am I. And we're starting to look in the mirror, and we're not recognizing the way that we used to look. It's just slowly starting, barely. But anyway, the godly woman, she treats her husband favorably. This is the word which means pleasantly, agreeably, favorably, positive. It reminds me, you've heard this story before. I know you have. A guy went to the doctor, and he said, Doc, I don't know what's going on. I can barely breathe. And so after the appointment, he says to the wife, why don't you stick around? I want to talk to you for a couple minutes. And she said to the wife, the doctor said, you need to treat your husband well, because too much stress is going to push him over the top. And you've got to, make his dinner, greet him with a kiss, dress really pretty do all this kind of stuff, and on and on and on he went. And you know the punchline, right? The punchline, she went out, and the man said, what did the doctor have to say to you? She said, you're going to die. You're going to die. Okay, that's not what this is about. Daleth. The word seek. She seeks wool and linen and willingly works with her hands. What we're talking about is we're talking about quality here. She's looking, she's seeking, she's selective. She finds the highest quality stuff she can find for her family that's going to last the longest, and she's a good consumer. And my wife is a pretty good consumer. Amazon, again, makes it easy, doesn't it? Get that 5 stars, you say, ooh, okay, that's what I'm going to buy. Daleth. Let's go to he, the next one. It says she, that's the word she, starts with he. Oh, that's strange anyway. She is a shrewd shopper. She's like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. I'm not sure how complimentary that is. Honey, you're like a merchant ship. But, you don't need to tell a woman twice to go shopping at the store, do you? Well, maybe today you do. I don't know. But it didn't used to be that way. Women just loved it. Let me shop till I drop. But this woman's a shrewd shopper. She's like a merchant. She checks stuff out, and she compares, and she says, well, after comparing the ingredients and the price and everything, I'm buying this one instead of that one. And so she's a shrewd shopper. Thank God for frugal women. Because I don't know if you know it, but frugality is really important. Making sure your money stretches as far as you can go. My daughter says that for the first time in her life, she's handling her own budget. She said she had no idea why they never had any money. Well, because you didn't save it, right? You got to put that money in the bank. You got to be frugal. So she's finally being frugal. So next one, vow. Then this is the word also. I guess they couldn't find any other word, and they wanted to say something about women getting up early in the morning. And I know some of you women, I know some women and men who don't get up early in the morning. This one says also, she also rises early. And you're like, this is not the one for me. She also rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and a portion for her maidservants. So here's a woman who's motivated to utilize her day wisely. And I don't know about you, but when I got married, I decided that, particularly when I had kids, that life was going to change for me. I was going to go to bed at a typical time, pretty much the same time every night, and get up pretty much the same time every morning. It was going to be a rhythm. And the reason it was going to be a rhythm is because I needed to get stuff accomplished, and she needed to get stuff accomplished. So we'd go to bed as early as we could because the kids wipe us out. And then we'd get up early before the kids got up. Good luck on that, except for Saturdays. You can't get them up. But and so we decided to follow this rhythm and to make sure we redeemed the time because the days are evil. And I followed that rhythm all the time. And, you know, there are people that don't follow a rhythm. And many times they have sleep problems, and maybe they come from not doing that, or maybe it's from some other reason. I really don't know why. But the rhythm is really important, the regular rhythm of doing things. And it helps us to make sure that we get things accomplished. So I get up in the morning, I read my Bible, I pray, and I do some other things as well. And that's really kind of what we're talking about. You get up early, you do the things that are important, you eat breakfast, the most important meal of the day, right, women? No, most women don't like breakfast, right? How many women like breakfast? How many women do not like breakfast? You know, that's about 50-50. I'm surprised. Okay, so some women like early and some women don't like early. But here, she gets food for her household. She's a woman on her mission. A Sunday school teacher asked one of her students, Johnny, do you say prayers before you eat? Johnny said, no, I don't need to say prayers. My mom knows how to cook. But regardless of whether your mom knows how to cook or not, you should say your prayers. The next one is Zane. Z. How did Z get there? Z is the last letter of the alphabet, right? But Zane, the word considers. She considers a field and buys it from a prophet. She plants a vineyard. Now, much maligned Christians and Jews have always been so maligned about the way we keep our women down, but yet in the Bible it extols a woman who owns her own property. Isn't that crazy? And here she is, buying her own property, planting her own vineyard, she's an investor, she's a businesswoman. She plots, and the word considers means to plot and to plan out a strategy. She says to herself, I want to help get my family ahead. I want to make the best life for my family. And how can I do that? I've created she became a real estate broker, and then she became a vineyard owner and all this kind of stuff. You know, a cottage industry. Maybe this is God's will for you. Maybe it's not. But certainly, if you've been thinking about it, maybe you ought to try doing it. God may have those plans or some other for you. The next one, Cheth, X. It's the word gird. She girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms, you know. Strong woman. She's determined. This means to roll up her sleeves, and she's unafraid of work. She looks at a formidable task, and then she goes back to bed. No, that's not how it works. She looks at a formidable task, and maybe it's overwhelming. But instead of being overwhelmed, she just takes one thing at a time. And, you know, if that's the way you do it, one day at a time, one task at a time, pretty soon you chip away at that big task. By the way, do you know how hard work is defined? Hard work can be defined as a lot of little things left undone. And then they add up. And then pretty soon your room is messy, your house is messy, your house is in disrepair. Have you ever been to we used to have a guy and a gal who attended here. They've since passed away into glory. But their house was in such incredible disrepair. And I asked him, was it always this way? You would walk in their house and you had to step across a chasm this big to get into their house, or you would fall down into, a couple feet below. And you walked in the house, there were holes in the walls, the roof was leaking, there was, plastic over the windows, and you said, how did it come to be this way? Well, it couldn't be because he was so incompetent that he couldn't fix things. I'm sure that wasn't the case. It was just a little neglect. Maybe I won't fix the roof. Maybe I won't fix the porch. Maybe I won't mow the lawn. And pretty soon, guess what happens? A little sleep, a little slumber, and wow, what a mess. On the other hand, what I've discovered in my life, if you do the little things, then the big things kind of take care of themselves. Not always, but certainly that's true. So little things like, and I try to do this, I'm not very good at it, but I try to do this. Like yesterday, I picked up these shoes that my wife had put in the back room, and I walked them, and what I try to do is I try to say, okay, put them exactly where they belong, so you don't have to make 2 trips. But I thought, I'll just set them on the bench, and I'll get them on the way back through again. Well, you know what the way back through when? Never. It never happened. And so this morning I got up and said, honey, what'd you do with my shoes? Well, they're right where you left them. Right where you left them. And if we keep doing that, guess what happens? Well, anyway, she girds herself with strength. She strengthens her arms. She rolls up her sleeves to accomplish a task. She's a strong woman. Teth, that's the next one. J, perceptive and hardworking. She perceives that her merchandise is good and her lamp does not go out by night. Now, the word perceive is an interesting one. It means to taste. I love those little, mini oranges. What do they call those things? Cuties. I love those. They're easy to peel and they taste so good. And when you take a bite of them, you can perceive, you can taste that the merchandise is good. And that's kind of the word used here. She knows that she's working, and she knows that people appreciate what she's doing. They're buying what she's selling, and she's doing a good job at it. And she knows that she's dealing in quality. And so because she knows that she has something of value, she not only gets up early in the morning, but she stays up late at night. Isn't that crazy? How many guys have women who work as hard as my wife? I mean, this woman never sits down. She drives me, you know why she drives me completely nuts? Guilt. That's why. Guilt. It's like, why is she still working? Why doesn't she just sit down and watch TV? Bring me a beer. Oh, no, I don't say that ever. Okay. But anyway, she works so hard. And I think a lot of women are that way, aren't they? And we just salute you, ladies, godly ladies, because you're such hardworking people. Jod, verse 19. The word here is hands. Hands starts with jod or Y. Again, it doesn't sound like Y to you or whatever, but it's what they tell me they are. Anyway, industrious. She stretches out her hands to the distaff and her whole hand holds the spindle. I think it's talking about sewing clothes and stuff. And my wife certainly does this. I know not all of you sew clothes, ladies. How many of you ladies do not sew? Okay, maybe almost half. But you probably do something else, huh? You have your own distaff somewhere else. And we're not all talented in the same way, are we? But God gives us the ability to do something that's valuable. Next one, K, kaf. And this has to do with the palm of the hand. The palm of the hand. It says she extends her palm or her hand to the poor, yet she reaches out her hands to the needy. She is a generous woman. a generous woman. Verse 19, you'll notice that she stretches out her hands at the home to the distaff. Verse 20, she extends her hand to those less fortunate. Verse 19, she closes her hand on the distaff to save a few bucks. Verse 20, she opens her hands to the needy to give a few bucks away. And charity starts at home, doesn't it? So important that we learn to be generous. Generosity is such an important characteristic, and the godly woman is generous. Lamed, verse 21. Lamed. Not is the word. I put unafraid, but it's the word not. Not afraid of the future. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. I don't know how scarlet really helps with the snow, but maybe it just didn't translate really well. It's probably snowsuit really there in the original. But yeah, that's right. She's not a worrier because she works hard to make sure that her family can meet the elements. You know, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I didn't have everything that kids have today. And when my parents were kids, they had even less. You know, during the Great Depression, if you didn't have shoes, well, that might have been the norm. I had shoes, but they always had holes in them. I had pants, but they were always hand-me-downs. There were 8 boys in my family, and I never got new clothes. But they worked. And I got to, wear my brother David's clothes, who gave them to Daniel, and Daniel got to wear his clothes and gave them to Doug, and Doug gave them to Donald, and then Donald gave them to me. Usually Donald ruined them before I got them. And in fact, one time I went to school, and our principal was named Mr. Badgema, and my mom had neatly pressed on some, remember patches on blue jeans? Now if you got holes in them, you're considered cool. But we didn't do holes, we had patches. So I showed up to a school with patches on my knees, and Mr. Badgema looked at me and he said, "Son, you're going to have to go home. We don't wear clothes with patches on in our school." And I looked at him and I said, "What's wrong with that?" And he said, "Sorry, you're going to have to go home." My mom had worked hard to make sure that those jeans had patches on them, but I had to go home anyway. And, how times have changed, huh? How times have changed. It was really a kind of a tough moment in my life. I still don't quite understand today why that value system was in place when they were such a neat patches too. And then remember, the patches changed and they became, pattern patches, and then there were no patches and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, she clothes her house very well. That goes along with 22, mem, or maybe that's where we are. Clothes are fashionable. She makes clothes for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. She makes tapestry for herself, huh? A godly woman doesn't have to follow the latest trends, does she? You don't have to wear the latest fashions from wherever. But there's nothing wrong with dressing well. Dressing modestly and dressing well. It's important. Every man ought to love to come home to his beautiful wife. And, women, it's okay to dress yourself with some tapestries. That's a good thing. Next one, 23, noon. It's almost noon. We'll be done by noon, but that's the Hebrew word. It's the word known. Known. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. Now, she has no control over this. Ladies, you have no control whether your husband is an oaf or not. We do question your judgment, though, when you marry the guy. But anyway, and maybe that's kind of what it's talking about. When you marry someone, you need to think about what they are, what they're become. It's just not that they make you feel good. It's just that you want to make sure that they're godly, that they're respectable, that you respect them, that they're honorable people. And then maybe they become known in the gates and sit among the elders of the land. And so not every woman can have a man who sits among the elders in the city, but every woman can have a godly man. if you get married, and that's what you should. Should be a high goal for you. 24, samech, and it's the letter O. Figure that one out. Okay? And this has to do with linen. She makes linen garments and sells them and supplies sashes for the merchants, and I chose the word capable here. She's capable of making stuff, at least again, some of you don't make stuff like this, but you make other stuff. And that's okay. Everybody has their own little ability. You don't have to have the same ability with everyone else. The next one is ain. And again, as we go through these, you'll notice that there are some repetitive ones. Again, it's not necessarily because we're saying you have to have all these 22 characteristics. Some of them are overlapping. Some of them are repetitive. But they are an example for us. And that's what we're looking at, the example. Ain, strength, dignified. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. Look at that. Strength, honor, and rejoicing. When growing up in my home, watching our kids grow up, and then looking into other homes, I noted one thing about some women. Some women are very unhappy. They don't rejoice. They don't have a good relationship with their husband. They don't think marriage is something that they like to keep or pursue. And it's not all her fault either, is it? Takes two to tango. And a lot of times, guys, we make our marriage miserable, don't we? We are as much at fault, maybe probably more. I think the Bible puts more weight with the man, doesn't he? You have a responsibility. Women seem naturally to work at that, but us men, it takes effort just to get off the couch. So it's our responsibility to some degree to work at making the marriage work. Now, again, let me just say this. Just because a woman is unhappy doesn't necessarily mean that it's the man's fault either. Right? We are responsible for our own attitudes. We need to work at strength and honor and rejoicing. I think it'd be a great goal to be able to say, I am happily married. And happily married doesn't mean that I'm satisfied necessarily with Mr. Right. It means I've chosen to be joyful no matter what circumstances that I am in. And it's amazing how that changes your relationship. It's absolutely amazing. Next one, P-E. And it's the word mouth. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. Now, she has a sensible tongue. And, I think most of the women in our church talk sense. It's difficult when you get next to someone who talks nonsense, isn't it? You just say, I got to get out of here. This is crazy. Nonsense. But here's a couple things that the godly woman is known for. Speaking with wisdom. How do you do that? Well, you do biblically, right? You make sure that your character and your values are biblical. And the second one, not only wisdom, but kindness. Kindness is a huge and important thing in the Christian faith. Be kind. That's kind of our job, to treat people with wisdom and kindness. Next one, Zaddy. It's a U. Watches. The word watches starts with this. She watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. She watches over her family. She makes it her business to know what her children need, what her husband needs. She makes it her business to know what's going on in her household. And what do they say about a woman who Yeah, she rules the household. It pretty much does, huh? And she's a busy woman. That's a repetition. Kof, Q. That's the word rise. Her children rise up and call her blessed. See, now we're getting to the good part, aren't we? Her children rise up and call her blessed. One woman told of filling out a form in her pediatrician's office. Beside the blank marked occupation were these words: if you devote the greater part of your time to loving, caring, and making a home for your family, put a big star in this place. And that's what women do, isn't that right? Every woman who makes it their mission to be a godly woman finds reciprocally, almost invariably, that her children appreciate it. Eventually, right? They rise up and call her blessed. So here's a woman's reward for cleaning, baking, bathing, changing diapers, training, discipline, lack of sleep, ball games, shopping, and all those things that a mother and wife does that she puts out a concerted effort for day after day, week after week, year after year. Then comes the reward. Her children bless her. Did you see in that song, You Say, how many children were in that? And had families gathered around and people smiling and proud to be part of that family. Maybe it brought a tear to your eyes looking at your family when it came around. They'll rise up and call you blessed. Resh, now verse 29. Many, it's the word many. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. You excel them all. This is the praise he gives to her. You know, I think it's important for us men today and every day to recognize really what our wives mean to us. The values that they bring to our lives, the smile they bring to our faces, the joy. Yeah. We need to make sure that our hearts are right, that we're not always complaining about the little things, huh? There's a lot of things to complain about, aren't there? You complain about the food not being warm enough, the house being too cold, the living room floor not being vacuumed. Get out the vacuum cleaner then. You know what I'm saying? Stuff she leaves laying around. You could complain, but also you could remember the hundreds and hundreds of things that she does so well. A little appreciation can go a long ways. So we want to say, ladies, thank you. That's my wife. Thank you. My mom, who will probably be watching this next week. Thank you so much. You know, a mom, a lot of times, at least my wife anyway was this way. She didn't work outside of the home for many years. Eventually she did. She never got a paycheck. In fact, today she doesn't get a paycheck. She just gets mine. But all the same, she's worth it, isn't she? Worth every bit of it. Praise will go miles further than money. Verse 30, shin. Deceitful is the word here. Not deceitful. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. This is the bottom line, isn't it? You want to be a truly strong woman, a wonderful woman, a beautiful woman. Fear the Lord. That's what it's about, the bottom line. This is something every single woman can do, is to fear the Lord. And boy, some of you do it really well. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. You know, there was a notorious skeptic named Robert Ingersoll way back, in the late 1800s or early 1900s. When he was in his heyday, 2 college students went to hear him give a lecture. And as they walked down the street after the lecture, one said to the other, well, I guess he sure knocked everything out from under Christianity, didn't he? How could you possibly believe Christianity after hearing that? The other one said, no, I don't think he did. Ingersoll could not explain my mother's life. I will stand by my mother's God. No matter what the argument, the value of your character goes miles further. Tau, the last one, verse 31. I think this is the last one. The word give. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. When you're a godly woman, you will be rewarded eventually. You know, there's nothing better in the world than to be a godly woman. I don't know what your goals are in life. I don't know what you want to have. I don't know what you want to do. But here's a goal worth every single person in this room, man or woman, be godly. That's what it's about. Ladies, you have a big responsibility. That's why we love you so much. Hope you enjoyed all 22 points of this incredibly long sermon about the poetry of a strong woman's life. The ABCs of godly womanhood. I hope that you will take a few of these and say, boy, there were so many, but maybe pick a few and say, I need to work on that one. Or, I'm doing pretty good at that one. Thank God for that. And maybe, guys, we could take one or two as well and say, let's praise our moms and let's thank our wives. Let's bow in a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for every single woman here, and we're honored to have them. We're honored that you've given us this wonderful gift. We bless your name. Amen. That Pine Grove